Hey guys, welcome back. In the last few videos, we've been talking about borrow conventions and design principles to create a better website, a better layout, better navigation. In this time, our main focus is going to be forms. Why forms matter and why we should focus to create a better user experience, and some tips and tricks that you can implement on your site so that it makes it easier for users to actually fill out a form. Talk to you soon. So let's talk about the elephant in the room. We all hate forms. There's not a single person that goes, hey, I'm gonna fill out a form today. Nobody really cares about filling out forms, but it's important. If you're a student, you need to fill out FAFSA. If you're trying to apply for a job, you need to fill out a form. Even in LinkedIn, you still have to sometimes go in and fill out some information so that you can get hired. Things like that is the general purpose of filling out a form. But there's one thing that most designers don't take into consideration, is that there's such a thing as form fatigue. Form fatigue is when a user has to correct information that they have been filling in over and over and over again. The more times that a user has to correct mistakes that they've done on a form, even though it's their mistakes, the less likely they are to actually doing and completing the form and being able to submit it and you getting that data. So you have to consider, as you're designing the forms, what are some ways that you can reduce form fatigue. One of the neatest ways that I've seen lately in forms creations and filling out forms is to have a length bar. In that length bar, usually when a user comes, they will see this form will take about 3 minutes for you to fill it out. And as you're progressing through the form, it would actually start counting down and letting you know, okay, you're getting close to the end, kind of giving them a hope that the form is about to be finished, to be filled out. So I think that's a really neat way to help users know and feel more comfortable with filling out a form, and kind of helping them understand and ease out of having to do that task. The next thing that I've also seen is breadcrumbs. I know we talked about breadcrumbs on our navigation, but you can also implement it on your forms. For example, if you have a very lengthy forms, you can break them down into smaller chunks, easily digestible. How do you make it easier for your users to do things? UI, UX, design, all of these things are relative to each other because usability is all about the user. So you can actually break it down into smaller chunks. Like for example, if you have to fill out information about your career, maybe you have to fill in information about yourself, then maybe you can use demographics where you have your name, last name, address, phone number, email address, confirm your email address, check here for whatever other information you have. And then for example, you can break it down to the next one, which may be income if you're trying to fill out FAFSA. So you have one breadcrumb for demographics, general demographics, one for income, then maybe for education, and so on and so forth. Having these different breaks on the form and kind of having that next button that you can click on so that you go to the next section will make it easier for a user to know, okay, completed section 1, check. Makes it easier for them, and psychologically it helps them move from one area to the next. Again, if you have very lengthy forms, there's nothing worse than to see your scroll bar on the right hand side and the little indicator be very, very small. One other way that you can help with creating forms and making it a little bit easier for users to fill it out. Now, this one goes back to basics. Clearly labeled forms. If you're supposed to have a first name only, don't say name, say first name. If you're supposed to have last name, just say last name. Don't say surname unless it's something that is used in the vocabulary of your target audience. If you have, for example, an email address, you can put in email address. having proper labels on your forms will make it really simple for you to fill that in and be able to know what is expected of you. If you're trying to, for example, create a field for passwords, let them know how long is a password supposed to be. Are they supposed to use both letters, uppercase, lowercase? Are they supposed to use special characters? How many special characters? What are the characters that I'm not allowed to use? All of these things can be placed on the form so that when a user goes to fill it in, they have a less harder time or have to be corrected on what they're trying to fill in. So clearly labeled form fields and clear expectations on what you want them to fill in on that form. Now, there's nothing more annoying in going to a website and not knowing when a form field is optional or required. Think about it. If you ask me to fill out your form, and I didn't know that some of those form fields were optional, then I might have a bitter taste on what your brand is, because you did not save me time, because you made me expect that those form fields are all required. Now, in the other hand, think about somebody that really, doesn't really care to fill out forms, doesn't really care to give information. So if you don't say which ones are required and they fill out some of the form fields and they click submit, and then you tell them, then you might create again a bitter taste on their mouths, because again, you're asking them and you're not being clear on the expectations of your form. So show what's important, show what's required, show what's optional, and I'm pretty sure your users will thank you for it. Now, with the creation of HTML5, we have these certain fields that we could use. Like, for example, you have a type of email, type of password, type of, for example, file, so you can upload a file. All these types can help for validation purpose. In other words, HTML can automatically validate that form and make sure that the email form field actually contains an email inside of it. Now, those can be easily bypassed, so you could also have a JavaScript validation behind it to help validate and make sure that those form fields are filled out as expected even before the form gets submitted. However, once the form is submitted, your backend code could also have an extra validation to make sure that nothing changed between when they submitted it to when it got delivered. And in that point, you could also send them back if there's any errors, so that you can let them know, okay, these specific fields were missing, or maybe this specific field was not filled to what we wanted you to fill it out as. All these things are things that you can put into implementation on your site, on your form, to make it easier for users to know before, during, and after you submit a form that everything is supposed to be filled out as expected. Now, there's nothing worse than filling out a form, sending it to the server returns back with an error, and then either the form is not filled out with the information that I provided, or second of all, the form is filled out, you tell me that there's an error, and then don't tell me where the error is. When you have an error on your form, please make sure that you visibly label it as an error. And then you go in and you make it easier for the users to know what mistakes they made and how they can fix it for that specific field. Highlight that error message or highlight that error field so that they know where to scroll to on the page, and makes it easier for them to find those errors. Again, usability is all about the user, and one of the things in usability is enjoyment. We don't enjoy filling out forms. However, we can make it bearable by giving them hints and make it easier for them to fill it out. So your user filled out the form and everything's great, and the form was submitted. Now what? As UX designer, you should also consider what comes after the form has been filled out. What is your success message says to the user that you're trying to target? So for example, if you fill out a contact us form, maybe you want to let them know how long would it take for somebody to reach you. What are other ways if there's an emergency for them to get in contact with you? If you're selling a product or service and you finished up your checkout process, maybe you show them other products that other users have purchased. And how do you make it easier for them to choose and give them options to maybe pick other products? How do you upsell somebody after they have submitted a form? All these are questions that, based on your goals and objectives for your site, you should consider as you're designing your forms. Forms are so valuable, from gathering data to fulfilling a transaction and everything in between. Think about ways that you can use your skills as a UI UX designer to make it easier for your users to make the unbearable bearable. Until the next time, bye.